My name is Clara Winslow, and I'm 34 years old. 10 years ago, on a night when the rain fell in sheets so heavy it blurred the world outside my window, my life changed forever, and not in the way people mean when they talk about miracles. I'd just come home from a 12-hour shift at the pediatric ward, my scrubs damp at the hem from the parking lot puddles. The tiny apartment was still warm from the space heater I'd left running. I kicked off my shoes, dropped my bag on the couch, and poured myself a glass of Merlot, the first deep breath of the day, loosening my shoulders. Outside, the rain drummed against the metal balcony railing in a steady rhythm, like it had all night at the hospital, and I thought finally, silence. The doorbell broke it. At first, I ignored it. It was past 9. Probably a delivery for a neighbor, I thought. But then it rang again, harder this time, sharp and insistent, slicing through my fatigue. My stomach tightened for reasons I couldn't name. When I opened the door, the world seemed to narrow to a single point. A small, rain-speckled car seat on my welcome mat, shrouded under a thin, damp blanket. My breath fogged in the chill as I knelt, heart thudding so loud I could hear it in my ears. I pulled back the blanket. A baby. 3 months old, if that. Rosy cheeks, a tiny mouth open in soft sleep, and a wisp of dark hair curling against her forehead. My sister's hair. Something white was tucked between the straps, folded paper, already soft at the creases. I recognized the handwriting before I read the words. Her name is Lily. I can't do this. Take care of her. I'm sorry. 7 words. 7 words that tore a hole straight through the life I thought I had. I stood abruptly, scanning the parking lot, the dark street. No one. No car pulling away. Only the hiss of rain in the streetlights. I pulled my phone from my pocket with shaking fingers and called Amanda. Straight to voicemail. Again and again. I scooped up the car seat, its weight shocking me. How could something so small weigh so much? Lily stirred, lips puckering, still asleep. I shut the door with my hip, locking it without thinking, as if the act might protect her from the truth that her mother had just vanished. My next call was to my parents. My mother's voice was cool from the start. We told her not to have that baby. She made her choice, my father added in the background, his tone flat. What am I supposed to do? My voice cracked, panic flooding me. I can't just keep a baby. I don't even... She's your burden now, my father cut in. We're too old for this, Clara. We're done cleaning up after Amanda. She's your granddaughter, I tried again, heat rising in my chest. And we never asked to be grandparents, my mother said, especially not to his child. The unspoken contempt in his lingered long after they hung up. I stood in my living room with the phone in one hand and the car seat in the other, the silence loud enough to hurt. I called Mark next, my boyfriend of 2 years, the man I thought I might marry. A baby? His voice was more disbelief than concern. Your sister just dumped her kid on you? That's insane. Call social services. It's my niece, Mark. Can you just please go to the 24-hour store and get some formula, diapers, anything? This isn't our problem, Clara. This is exactly the kind of drama Amanda lives for. Don't get sucked in. That was the moment I realized I was on my own. 10 minutes later, Lily was back in the car seat, this time in the passenger side of my Corolla as I drove through the downpour toward the supermarket. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I wandered the baby aisle in wet scrubs, frantically Googling formula for 3-month-old. My hands shook so badly I dropped the first box. A woman stocking shelves old enough to be my grandmother noticed. She came over, her voice soft. First baby? I swallowed. Not mine. My niece. She just showed up tonight. Her eyes softened in a way my own mother's hadn't. She guided me through formula. Diapers, wipes, bottles. Don't worry, sweetheart, she said as she rang me up. Babies don't need perfect. They just need someone who stays. Back home, the hours blurred into a pattern of tiny cries, bottle warming, awkward diaper changes, and whispered reassurances I wasn't sure were for her or for me. At 3 a.m., Lily woke again, fists waving. I sat on the couch, cradling her, the rain still rattling against the glass, and whispered into the soft crown of her head. I don't know what happened with your mom, but I'm here now, and I'll figure this out. You're safe with me. Even as I said it, some part of me knew that keeping that promise wouldn't be easy. and that someday someone would try to take her from me. By sunrise, the storm had faded into a heavy mist that clung to the windows, but inside my apartment, the air still smelled faintly of warm formula and baby powder. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard her, those soft, uncertain cries that would rise without warning, as if even in sleep, she knew her world had been shaken apart. Lily's eyelids fluttered open around 6, revealing eyes so dark they seemed to swallow the light. She stared at me like she was trying to decide if I was friend or foe. The truth was, I wasn't sure myself. My phone lay on the coffee table, silent, screen dark. No call from Amanda, no text. I checked the time, then scrolled through my contacts, thumb hovering over Mom. I didn't call. I already knew what they'd say, what they'd refuse to say. Instead, I propped Lily in the crook of my arm and tried to make sense of the baby formula instructions. 4 ounces? Was that too much? Too little? How warm was warm, anyway? I held the bottle to my wrist like I'd seen in movies, second-guessing myself until her tiny wail cut through the hesitation. I gave her the bottle and prayed I wasn't doing permanent damage. After she finished, she blinked up at me with a milk-drunk daze, her small body slack and trusting. My chest tightened. She didn't know me. She didn't know I had no idea what I was doing, and yet here she was, already relying on me. By mid-morning, exhaustion hit like a wave. My apartment looked like a disaster zone, receipts from the late-night store trip, an open can of formula, wet burp cloths, a heap of discarded blankets. And in the middle of it all, Lily, wrapped in one of my old sweaters because I had nothing small enough for her. I decided I had to make a plan. First step, get actual baby supplies. Again. This time, the trip to the store felt different. People glanced at me, at us, as we passed, their eyes lingering in that way strangers do when they're trying to figure out a relationship. A young mother, an older sister, a babysitter. In the diaper aisle, a woman with 2 toddlers in her cart paused. "She's beautiful," she said. I managed a smile. "Thanks. She's my niece." "That's nice," she said, distracted by her kids pulling at boxes. Family helps family. Do they, I thought? At checkout, the same elderly cashier from last night recognized me. She asked gently, "Any word from your sister?" I shook my head. "Well," she said, sliding the packages across the scanner, "you'll find your way. Just remember, sometimes the people we think should help are the ones who can't. And sometimes help comes from places you never expect." Her words stuck with me as I carried the bags to the car. When we got home, I laid Lily down in the center of my bed, surrounding her with pillows like a tiny makeshift island. I snapped a picture of her, not knowing why. Later, I'd realize it was the first photo of 1,000, proof that even from the beginning, I was documenting our story. I tried Amanda's number again, straight to voicemail. My voice trembled as I left a message. "Amanda, I have her. I'll take care of her, but you need to call me, please." Hours later, when my phone buzzed, my heart leapt, only to drop again when I saw it was Mark. Against my better judgment, I answered. "How's the situation?" His voice was careful, as though he were talking about a plumbing leak. "She's fine. I'm figuring it out." "Clara, this is crazy. You can't just decide to keep someone's kid. You need to call child services before this gets complicated." "It's already complicated," I said, "and she's not just someone's kid, she's family." Silence on the other end, then a sigh. "You're making a mistake." When I hung up, I sat on the edge of the bed watching Lily kick her legs under the blanket. For the first time since she'd arrived, the apartment was quiet. Too quiet. My thoughts filled the space, whispering questions I didn't want to answer. Where was Amanda? Why had she left Lily with me and not our parents? And why did I have the sickening sense that this wasn't the last time someone would try to hand me a problem and walk away? That night, as I settled Lily into a drawer lined with soft towels, the safest makeshift crib I could manage, I whispered again, "I'll figure this out." My voice was steadier now, as if repeating it might make it true. Outside, the rain had stopped, but in my chest, the storm was only beginning. 2 days in, I stopped thinking of it as babysitting. Babysitting implied an end time. Babysitting came with a number you could call if something went wrong. This was neither. I filed a police report on the 3rd morning, just like the officer at the front desk told me, in case you need to prove custody later. His tone was indifferent, as if mothers abandoning their infants on doorsteps was just another Tuesday. When I explained that Amanda hadn't been missing, that she'd chosen to leave Lily, he nodded like it was nothing new. Well, ma'am, as long as she left the baby with a family member, it's not a criminal matter. I walked out of the station into a sun that felt too bright for the conversation I'd just had. The next call was to a family lawyer, a woman named Julia Hernandez, whose voice over the phone was brisk but not unkind. Temporary guardianship, she explained. It'll take time, money, and paperwork. Without Amanda here to sign off, we'll have to prove abandonment. Her pause was deliberate. Do you have the note she left? I did. I'd folded it carefully and slid it into the front pocket of my wallet, the paper already worn at the edges. I didn't know why, but part of me couldn't throw it away. The days became a blur of trial and error parenting. I learned the difference between a feed me cry and an I'm just cranky cry. I learned that 3-month-old babies have no respect for the fact you might have just changed their diaper 5 minutes ago. I learned that even the smallest ones can somehow manage to spit up directly down the front of your shirt in a way that makes you consider burning it. One night, Lily developed a low-grade fever. Panic surged through me so fast my hands shook, dialing the pediatric nurses line at Memorial Hospital. A woman I used to work shifts with talked me down, walking me through the steps like I was one of her patients. You've got this, Clara, she said before hanging up. You're better equipped than most first-time parents. Trust yourself. Trust myself. Right. Mark came by once, unannounced, 3 days after the baby arrived. I'd been hoping for an apology, a change of heart. Instead, he stood in my doorway and surveyed the clutter of bottles, blankets, and baby gear like it was an alien invasion. I can't do this, he said flatly. I didn't sign up for all of this. You didn't sign up for me? I asked quietly. For this version of you, he replied, avoiding my eyes. We had plans, Clara. Travel, buying a house, advancing our careers. You can't do any of that now. What was I supposed to do? Put her in foster care? Maybe that would have been better. The words landed like a slap. I didn't say goodbye. I just handed him the sweater he'd left at my place weeks ago and shut the door. By the end of the second week, the apartment felt even smaller than before. The bassinet I'd bought off Facebook Marketplace barely fit in my bedroom. Every corner was taken up by diapers, baby clothes, or formula tins. I made a decision. I was moving. The new place was a 2-bedroom on the east side of town, closer to the hospital. It smelled faintly of old wood and sunlight when I first walked in, and I pictured where Lily's crib would go before I'd even signed the lease. It wasn't just about space. It was about planting a flag, telling the universe I was here for the long haul. It cost more than I could comfortably afford, and the moving expenses wiped out most of my savings. I sold the couch I loved and the armchair my grandmother had given me to cover the deposit. As I unpacked boxes at midnight, Lily asleep in her new crib, I realized that every decision from now on would start with what's best for her. And strangely, I didn't resent it. There were still moments, slipping into my car for work and spotting an old travel brochure in the glove compartment, where I felt the shadow of the life I'd planned. But then I'd come home to Lily's gummy smile, her tiny hands reaching for me, and that shadow would shrink, just a faint outline of something I no longer wanted. I'd become a mother without ceremony, without preparation, without anyone's blessing. But I'd also learned something important in those first weeks. Sometimes the strongest vows are the ones you make in the quiet, when no one is watching. And I had every intention of keeping mine. The first year with Lily was both the slowest and fastest of my life. Some days dragged on in an endless loop of feedings, naps, laundry, and my constant internal question, am I doing this right? Other days flew past so quickly that I'd look up and realize she'd grown into a completely different baby overnight. By spring, she could roll over, her little body flopping from back to belly with a look of surprise every time. By summer, she was sitting up on her own, smacking her hands on the floor like a drum. And by autumn, she was pulling herself up on the furniture, chubby fingers gripping the coffee table like she owned it. I tried to capture every milestone, photos, videos, little notes scribbled on sticky pads. In the back of my closet, I kept a shoebox labeled "For Lily." Inside was the note Amanda had left, Lily's hospital bracelet from the pediatric checkup, a lock of her hair from her first trim, and dozens of tiny mementos. I didn't know if she'd ever want them, but I knew someday she'd need to understand where she came from. Not everyone celebrated with me. My parents' visits were rare and, when they happened, clipped. My mother would arrive with a gift, a dress 2 sizes too small, a stuffed animal for a baby Lily's age had already outgrown. "You should keep her in dresses," she'd say, frowning at Lily's soft cotton onesie. "It's important for little girls to look nice." "She's 8 months old, Mom. She looks nice when she's clean and fed." My father would hover near the doorway, hands in his pockets, as though he was there under protest. He'd ask, "Heard from Amanda?" And when I said no, he'd just grunt. I realized early on their visits weren't for Lily. They were to keep up appearances. The real support came from places I hadn't expected. My neighbor, Mrs. Santiago, who lived 2 doors down, became my lifeline. She taught me her miracle trick for calming a colicky baby, rocking them gently while humming low enough that the sound vibrated against their cheek. The pediatric nurses I'd worked with sent hand-me-downs from their own kids. Even the supermarket cashier still asked about Lily when she saw me. The legal guardianship process dragged on for months, each hearing feeling like a formality in a language I barely understood. Julia reassured me we were making progress, but every court date made me wish for Amanda's signature, her official acknowledgement that I was the right place for Lily. Of course, that never came. By the time Lily's first birthday rolled around, I had exactly $46 in my bank account. There would be no Pinterest-perfect party, no elaborate cake. Instead, Mrs. Santiago baked a single-layer vanilla cake with pastel frosting, and my coworker Janice brought a bag of balloons. The three of us sang Happy Birthday in my kitchen while Lily sat in her high chair, blinking at the candlelight before gleefully smashing her tiny hands into the frosting. It wasn't much, but it was ours. Still, I couldn't help thinking of what I'd lost. That year, my promotion at the hospital had quietly been handed to someone else. My relationship with Mark was a ghost I never heard from again. My social life had withered into quick texts with friends I no longer had time to meet. And yet, on the night of Lily's birthday, after everyone had gone home and she was asleep in her crib, I stood in her doorway watching her chest rise and fall, feeling something I hadn't felt in months: peace. Maybe I'd lost some things, but the truth was, I'd gained more. That first year had carved something new into me: an instinct to protect, a patience I'd never known, and a love that made every sacrifice feel like a bargain I'd gladly take again. And I didn't know it then, but the bond Lily and I forged in that first year would be exactly what someone else would try to break apart later. 5 years passed in the blink of an eye. The baby who once fit in the crook of my arm was now a bright-eyed kindergartner who could talk my ear off about dinosaurs, outer space, and why pancakes tasted better when they had blueberry smiles. Our lives had settled into a rhythm: mornings of scrambled eggs and missing socks, afternoons of school pickups and playground dust, evenings of bedtime stories and whispered secrets under the covers. I'd traded my hospital shifts for a job as a school nurse at an elementary school across town. The hours were family-friendly, the pay steady, and the chaos of an ER had been replaced by playground scrapes and ice packs. Our apartment had transformed too. The walls were covered in Lily's artwork: crayon galaxies, stick figures holding hands under rainbows, messy splashes of paint she swore were abstract. My once pristine bookshelf now leaned with dog-eared picture books and mismatched Lego sets. Friday nights were sacred: homemade popcorn, movies projected on the wall, pillow forts so elaborate they had guest rooms. Sundays meant the park: her favorite climbing structure, my favorite coffee thermos, and the comfort of watching her run in the same spot every week. But with school came questions I'd known were coming. Nana, she called me that after mispronouncing Clara as a toddler, and the name had stuck. Why don't I have a mom and a dad like the other kids? I set down the dish towel and turned to her. "You do have a mom. I'm your mom." "But you're my aunt too," she said matter-of-factly, tilting her head like she was solving a puzzle. I'd always promised myself I'd be truthful with her, but in a way that wouldn't make her feel abandoned. "Your birth mom, my sister, wasn't ready to take care of a baby when you were born. She loved you enough to make sure you came to me." She thought about this, her brow furrowing in that way that made her look so much older than 6. "Will she ever come back?" "I don't know, sweetheart, but no matter what, you and I are a family, always." That spring, I made her a storybook: construction paper pages bound with ribbon, stick figure drawings of families in all shapes and sizes. "Some kids live with grandparents," the book said. "Some with 2 moms or 2 dads. some with just one parent, and some I'd drawn a picture of us inside a big red heart, live with an aunt who loves them more than anything. She read it over and over, tracing the heart with her fingertip. "We're a heart family," she declared one night at bedtime. "That's better than a blood family." My parents still visited a few times a year, though never for long. My mother continued bringing ill-fitting dresses and passive-aggressive advice. "She should be in ballet by now," she'd comment, ignoring the fact that Lily preferred building Lego castles to pirouettes. My father kept his distance, asking shallow questions about school before retreating into silence. But Lily had people who showed up. Mrs. Santiago, my coworkers, my friends from the single parents group who became our holiday chosen family. Life wasn't easy. I took on evening telehealth shifts after Lily's bedtime to build a modest savings for her future. It meant less sleep for me, but every dollar that went into that account felt like a brick in the foundation of her security. We even managed our first real vacation when she was 6, a 3-day trip to Disney World. Watching her face light up at the sight of Cinderella's castle made every extra shift worth it. On the flight home, she fell asleep with her head on my shoulder, clutching a plastic tiara. "Best day ever," she mumbled in her sleep. By the time she turned 9, our little 2-person world felt unshakable, stable, safe. I didn't know that safety was about to be tested by the one person I thought would never show up again. It was a Tuesday evening like any other. Lily was at the kitchen table working on her solar system project, carefully gluing paper planets onto a black poster board while I stirred spaghetti sauce on the stove. The air smelled of oregano and garlic, warm and familiar. My phone buzzed on the counter. The number was unfamiliar, area code from our own city. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in me, instinct or dread, made me swipe to answer. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was hesitant, low. "Clara, it's Amanda." The spoon froze in my hand. For a moment, all I heard was the faint bubbling of the sauce. "Amanda, where are you? Are you okay?" "I'm fine. I'm in town. I was hoping we could meet." She sounded different, steady, almost polished, but there was a thread of nervousness under her words. I glanced at Lily, her small tongue peeking out as she lined up Saturn's rings just right. My grip on the phone tightened. "When?" "Tomorrow. Morning? There's a cafe on Brookside near the park." "Fine." My voice was clipped. I didn't tell her Lily knew nothing about her being here. I didn't tell her that part of me wanted to hang up and never answer again. That night, after Lily was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the photo of us from last summer's trip to the zoo. I remembered how, when Lily had gotten tired, I'd carried her on my back all the way to the parking lot, her cheek pressed against my shoulder. I thought about what Amanda had missed, what she had chosen to miss, and I wondered, why now? The next morning, the cafe was quiet, the air rich with roasted coffee beans. I got there early, choosing a table near the window so I could see her coming. When Amanda walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Her once wild curls were cut into a sleek bob. She wore a tailored blazer, designer bag slung casually over her shoulder. She looked like someone from a life I had never known her to have. "You look good," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. Her smile was tentative. "So do you," I replied, though my eyes were busy searching her face for the sister I'd once known. She didn't waste time. "I've been sober for 7 years now, finished my degree in graphic design, married a wonderful man named Thomas. We've built a good life." The words were neat, orderly, like they'd been rehearsed. I kept my hands wrapped around my coffee cup, feeling the heat soak into my skin. She told me about hitting rock bottom after leaving Lily with me, living on the streets in San Diego, the rehab program where she met Thomas. "I wasn't fit to be a mother," she admitted. "I was using during my pregnancy. I tried to stop, but after she was born, I spiraled again. Leaving her with you was the only good decision I made back then." Her eyes flicked toward my phone when I showed her photos. Lily's first steps, first day of kindergarten, Halloween costumes, birthday parties. Her hand trembled slightly as she swiped through them. "She's beautiful," she whispered, "and happy. You've done an amazing job." I felt a swirl of emotions, old anger rising like bile, but also a strange flicker of hope. Maybe, after all this time, she could be part of Lily's life in a way that wouldn't cause more damage. "I'd like to meet her," Amanda said finally, looking straight at me, "if you think that would be okay." I sipped my coffee, letting the silence stretch. Part of me wanted to say no. The other part knew that the question was never going to go away. Let me think about it, I said. My voice was calm, but my chest was tight. Because deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. I didn't rush the decision. For days, I turned it over in my mind, weighing the risks and possibilities. I spoke with a child psychologist I trusted from work, laying out the history and the gap of 10 years. She advised that, if I allowed contact, it should be in a neutral, child-friendly setting, somewhere Lily could retreat into play if the emotions became too much. So I chose the Children's Museum downtown, a place Lily loved for its sprawling art room and interactive exhibits. The morning of the meeting, Lily sat at the kitchen table, braiding yarn into what she called a friendship cord. I crouched beside her. "Sweetheart, there's someone I'd like you to meet today. My sister Amanda." "Your sister? I didn't know you had one." "You've met her before," I said carefully, "but you were a baby. She's your birth mom." Her eyes narrowed in curiosity. "Like, I came from her tummy?" "Yes, but she was sick when you were born, and she knew she couldn't take care of you, so she made sure you came to me." "Will she take me away from you?" she asked, voice so small it hit me like a blow. "No, you live with me. That's not changing." She thought about it, then shrugged, like she'd decided to reserve judgment. "Okay, but I want to wear my star shoes." Amanda was already waiting when we arrived. She stood near the entrance, holding a paper bag from the museum cafe, her posture a mixture of eagerness and nerves. When she saw us, she smiled, not the polished one from the cafe, but something softer. "Hi, Lily," she said gently, kneeling to be at eye level. "I've been looking forward to meeting you for a long time." "Hi," Lily replied, half hiding behind me. Then, with blunt child honesty, "Nana says you're her sister." "That's right. And I'm also your birth mom, which means you grew in my tummy before you were born." Lily considered this for a long moment. "But Nana's my real mom, because she takes care of me and loves me and makes me soup when I'm sick." Amanda's eyes glistened, but she smiled. "You're right. You're very lucky to have such a wonderful mom." The first 20 minutes were awkward. Lily clung to me, answering Amanda's questions with one-word replies, her gaze darting toward the art room down the hall. Finally, I suggested we all go there. Something shifted when Lily started painting. Amanda joined in, sketching a simple flower in watercolor, and Lily glanced over, intrigued. "You're pretty good," she admitted. "I like to draw," Amanda said. "Maybe next time I can bring you some of my sketchbooks." By the end of the visit, Lily wasn't exactly relaxed, but she wasn't hiding anymore. When we said goodbye, Amanda crouched again. "Thank you for spending time with me today." Lily shrugged. "Okay, bye." It was hardly a Hallmark reunion, but it wasn't a disaster either. Driving home, Lily stared out the window. "She's nice," she said finally. "She is," I replied, keeping my voice neutral, "but I still like living with you better." I smiled, but inside I felt an unease I couldn't quite name. Amanda had played the role perfectly, respectful, patient, non-threatening. And something about that perfection made me nervous. The visits started small, an hour here, an afternoon there, always in public spaces, always with me nearby. Amanda never pushed, never overstepped. She brought sketchbooks, small art sets, a necklace with a tiny star pendant that Lily wore for a week straight. I began to think maybe I'd been wrong to be so suspicious. Maybe this was what Lily needed, the chance to know her birth mother without it threatening the life we'd built. Then Amanda announced they were moving. We were sitting at a corner table in a quiet coffee shop when she told me. She was glowing, animated, like she couldn't wait to share the news. Thomas got a transfer offer from his firm, bigger clients, higher pay, and I got a position at a local design company. We just bought a house 20 minutes from here. I nodded slowly, stirring my coffee, though it had gone cold. "That's close." "That's the point," she said, smiling. "We want to be closer to Lily, be a regular part of her life." The word regular sat between us like a stone. A week later, she and Thomas invited us to dinner at their new home. It was everything she described. Gleaming hardwood floors, a backyard with a white swing, a playroom already outfitted with bookshelves and art supplies. Thomas was charming, complimenting my cooking when I brought dessert, asking Lily about her school projects, laughing in the right places. But I noticed how often Amanda glanced at him before answering questions, as if checking for approval. And I noticed how he studied me, measured, assessing, like a man making mental notes in a negotiation. After Lily excused herself to show Thomas her sketchbook in the living room, Amanda leaned forward, her voice low. Clara, I think it's time we talked about the future. I set my fork down. What kind of future? Her fingers twisted in her lap, but her tone was deliberate. Now that we're here, settled, financially stable, I'd like to be Lily's mother again, legally. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. I am her mother, Amanda, have been for 10 years. Biologically, she's mine, she said softly, as though that somehow made it gentler. And I can offer her things you can't: a house, 2 parents, a better school district, college funds, vacations, everything a child should have. She already has everything she needs, I said, my voice tight, including stability, security, love. Amanda's eyes flicked toward the doorway, where Thomas's laughter floated in from the other room. Just think about it, she said. The conversation ended there, but I couldn't shake the chill it left behind. As I drove Lily home that night, she hummed to herself in the back seat, oblivious to the fact that her world had just been quietly threatened. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, a cold knot forming in my stomach. Amanda had crossed a line, and something told me she wasn't about to step back. It was my parents who made the next move. They called one Friday afternoon, my mother's voice overly bright. "Sunday dinner," she said. "All of us. Bring Lily." The "all of us" didn't register until we arrived. Amanda and Thomas were already there, settled comfortably in my parents' living room as if they'd been coming for years. Amanda was sipping tea beside my mother, who looked at her with the kind of indulgent smile she'd never once turned on me. The meal was polite on the surface: roast chicken, green beans, polite small talk, but the undercurrent was electric, each conversation thread tugging toward something I couldn't see yet. It happened after dessert plates were cleared. My father leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. "Your sister has told us everything," he said, as if this was a court proceeding, about her recovery, her marriage, her desire to be a proper mother to Lily. I stared at him. "You've been in contact with her?" "For about 3 years now," he said. No apology, no shame. She reached out when she finished rehab. 3 years. They'd known where she was, known she was alive, known she'd rebuilt her life, and not once had they told me. "Why didn't you say anything?" My voice was low, sharp. "She asked us not to," my mother said, as if that settled it. "She wanted to be ready before seeing Lily, and now she is. She's turned her life around, Clara. We think it's time Lily be with her real mother." There it was, the knife, slid in clean. "She already is with her real mother," I said. My hands were shaking, but I kept my voice steady for Lily, who sat at the far end of the table, quietly coloring on a paper napkin. My father's gaze hardened. "Blood is blood. You've done your part, but a child belongs with her actual mother when possible." Something hot surged in my chest. Rage, disbelief, grief, all at once. I stood abruptly. "We're leaving." Lily looked up, startled. "But we haven't had dessert." "We'll get ice cream on the way home," I said, forcing a smile as I helped her with her coat. The drive back was quiet. Streetlights flashed through the windows, slicing across Lily's thoughtful face. Finally, she spoke. "Nana, Grandma said I might go live with Aunt Amanda and Uncle Thomas. Is that true?" My grip tightened on the steering wheel. "No, sweetie. You live with me. That's your home." "But she said Aunt Amanda's my real mom." I pulled over, turned to face her, and took her small hands in mine. "Listen to me, Lily. You and I are a family. We've been a family since the day you came to me. Nothing is going to change that." Her lower lip trembled. "Cross your heart?" "Cross my heart," I said, making the motion we'd made for every important promise since she was 2. She nodded, leaning against me. But that night, I found her tangled in her blankets, whispering in her sleep, "Don't take me. Please don't take me." I sat on the edge of her bed, brushing her hair back from her damp forehead, and made a silent vow. If they wanted a fight, I would give them one. 3 weeks later, it arrived. Thick, cream-colored envelope with a court seal in the corner, the kind of letter that never brings good news. Inside was the petition. Amanda seeking restoration of her parental rights and full custody of Lily. The language was clinical, but every line felt like a strike against the life we had built. Termination of guardianship. Best interests of the minor child. Home study. Psychological evaluation. By the time I reached the court date at the bottom of the page, 30 days from now, my hands were trembling so hard I nearly dropped it. That night, after Lily was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with the petition in front of me, staring at the words until they blurred. I'd known Amanda wanted more. I'd known she was inching toward something. but seeing it in black and white, backed by a legal system that might actually agree with her, knocked the breath out of me. The next morning, I called Julia Hernandez. She remembered me from years earlier. Her voice was steady, no nonsense. I won't lie to you, Clara. Biological parents have strong rights, even if they've been absent. But the fact that you've been Lily's caregiver for 10 years, her whole life, gives you a significant advantage. Judges don't like to disrupt stable environments unless there's a compelling reason. She told me what we needed: documentation of my role in Lily's life, proof of her well-being, evidence that Amanda's sudden claim wasn't in Lily's best interest. I started gathering everything: school records, medical histories, photos, notes from teachers. I reached out to friends and neighbors who'd been there for us over the years, asking them to write statements about our home, our bond, our history. But while I was building my case, I couldn't ignore the toll it was taking on Lily. She was quieter, more watchful, clinging to me before school, asking almost daily, "You promise I'll still live with you?" "I promise," I'd say, even though I knew the truth. A judge had the final word. One night, she crawled into my bed, her hair mussed from sleep. "What if the judge likes Aunt Amanda better?" she whispered. I pulled her close. "It's not about liking, sweetheart. It's about what's best for you. And I will make sure the judge knows that's here, with me." She nodded, but I could feel the tension in her small body. After she fell asleep, I sat awake in the dark, the letter spread out on my nightstand. The paper seemed to hum with threat, as if it knew it had the power to upend everything. I'd spent a decade building a safe world for Lily. Now, someone who'd been gone for all of it wanted to claim the title of mother, as if that word meant nothing about the years in between. And I was going to have to prove, to strangers in a courtroom, that love and presence mattered more than biology. The first real blow came when Julia slid a copy of Amanda's court filings across her desk toward me. "Read these," she said quietly. I scanned the pages and my stomach dropped. Affidavits from my parents, both of them, supporting Amanda's petition. My mother's statement painted me as manipulative, claiming I'd turned a temporary arrangement into a permanent separation and alienated Lily from her birth mother. My father's affidavit accused me of refusing multiple invitations to family events, blocking Lily from traditions and bonds with her grandparents. It was surreal, reading lies about my life written in the hand of the people who'd barely shown up for it. "They visited when it suited them," I said, my voice shaking. "And when they did, it was criticism, not connection. They knew where Amanda was for years and said nothing. Now they're acting like I stole her?" Julia nodded grimly. "We'll refute all of it. Do you have texts, emails, anything to prove the actual frequency of visits?" I did. Years of half-hearted check-ins, last-minute cancellations, passive-aggressive messages I'd saved out of habit. Now, those petty digital records were evidence, proof that their sudden claim of deep involvement was fiction. But it wasn't just paperwork that worried me, it was Lily. Her teacher called one afternoon to say she'd burst into tears during class when another child talked about moving to a new house. At home, she was restless at night, waking from nightmares and crawling into my bed without a word. "This isn't fair to her," I told Julia after one meeting. "She didn't ask for any of this." "No child does," she replied. "Our job is to shield her from as much of it as possible and to show the court the damage a sudden separation would cause." So I arranged for Lily to see a child psychologist, someone who could give her a safe space to unpack the fears she wouldn't say out loud to me. After 2 sessions, the therapist called. "She has significant anxiety about being separated from you," she said. "She associates her birth mother with instability. Forcing a custody change now could cause emotional harm." It was validating, but it was also heartbreaking to have it confirmed. This fight wasn't just mine. Lily was carrying it too, in ways her small frame shouldn't have to bear. That night, as I tucked her in, she asked in a whisper, "If the judge says I have to live with Aunt Amanda, can I still call you Mom?" I swallowed hard. "You will always call me Mom, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you stay right here." She reached for my hand under the blanket. "Cross your heart?" "Cross my heart," I said. And this time, I wasn't just making her a promise. I was making myself one. The day after the affidavits landed, I called the same private investigator who had tracked Amanda years ago. His name was Frank Delaney, a man with an easy smile and the kind of calm that made you believe he'd find whatever he was looking for. This time, I told him, sliding Amanda's petition across his desk, "I'm not looking for where she is. I need to know what she's really doing and why now." Frank leaned back, scanning the pages. "You think she's hiding something?" I think this timing is too perfect to be a coincidence. She's been in town for months, playing nice, and now, right at the 10-year mark, she files for custody? There's a reason. He nodded slowly. I'll start with her and the husband. Employment, finances, social media, legal history, anything that doesn't match the story they're telling the court. Within a week, he had the first threads. Amanda's public image matched what she'd told me. A clean record since rehab, a job at a design firm, a neat little house in a good neighborhood. But Thomas was different. He's got a history, Frank said, sliding a manila folder toward me over the diner table where we were meeting. A dismissed domestic violence charge from years ago, financial troubles from a failed business venture, and a string of small claims lawsuits for unpaid contractors. None of it's current, but it's a pattern. I stared at the photocopied court documents, the lines of text blurring for a moment. Does Amanda know about this? If she does, she's not talking about it publicly. But it wasn't just Thomas's past. Frank had noticed a series of very specific online searches from accounts linked to Thomas. Searches for a man's name. Who is he? I asked. I don't know yet, Frank admitted. But it's not random. He's been looking for him in multiple databases, public records, social media, even property records. And it's been going on for months. Something about it gnawed at me. Could it be Lily's father? Frank raised an eyebrow. You don't know who that is? I shook my head. Amanda never told me. I never pressed. At the time, it didn't matter. She was gone, and Lily was here. Well, Frank said, tucking his notepad back into his jacket, I'll find out. As I walked home that night, the November wind biting at my face, I thought about those searches, about the way Thomas's eyes had lingered on Lily the night we'd been at their house, the way Amanda had looked to him for cues. Something was coming. And if my gut was right, it wasn't about love or family at all. Frank called me 2 days later, his voice carrying that charged energy I'd come to recognize. We need to meet, tonight. We sat in the back booth of the same diner, the air heavy with the smell of frying onions. He placed a folder on the table between us. The man Thomas has been searching for, his name is Jason Reynolds. I didn't recognize it. Who is he? He's Lily's biological father. The words landed like a weight in my chest. You're sure? Positive. I matched his photo against old social media posts from Amanda's 20s. Timeline lines up. And here's the kicker. Jason's grandfather passed away last year, left him an inheritance in the ballpark of 8 figures. I sat back, the pieces snapping together in my mind with sickening clarity. You're saying... I'm saying if Amanda regains custody and establishes paternity, she could claim retroactive child support, plus set herself up to control any trust or financial benefits in Lily's name. My stomach turned. This wasn't about reclaiming motherhood. It was about money. Millions of it. Frank wasn't finished. There's more. Thomas's business? Not thriving like they claim. He's leveraged to the hilt. The house is mortgaged to the maximum. And there are quiet rumors in his industry that he's scrambling for liquidity. It all came together now. Amanda's sudden reappearance, the perfectly timed reunion, the push for legal custody. They'd been setting the stage. I flipped through the documents, inheritance records, property liens, screenshots of Thomas's search history, cold, irrefutable proof. Can you give me all of this in a format my lawyer can present? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Already done. When I handed the folder to Julia the next day, her eyes widened. She flipped through each page slowly, her mouth tightening. Clara, this changes everything. Judges care about motives. And this, she tapped the inheritance record, is a motive the size of a freight train. That night, I sat on my couch with the sealed folder beside me, watching Lily work on an art project at the coffee table. She was drawing a tree, roots stretching deep into the ground, branches covered in red and gold leaves. What's that? I asked. It's us, she said without looking up. You're the roots. I'm the branches. I swallowed hard, blinking back the sting in my eyes. They thought they could buy her, claim her, move her like a piece on a board for their own gain. But they didn't understand. We weren't for sale. The courthouse was colder than I expected, its marble floors echoing each step like a warning. I wore the navy suit I'd bought just for this day, hair pulled back tight, a folder of neatly organized notes clutched in my hand. Lily was spending the day with her art teacher, safe from the tension I knew was coming. Amanda and Thomas sat at the petitioner's table, polished to perfection. Amanda wore a floral dress that whispered maternal warmth. Thomas's tailored suit practically screamed financial stability. My parents sat directly behind them, as if they were part of some united front. My mother's lips were pressed into a thin smile. My father stared straight ahead. When the judge entered, silver-haired, glasses low on her nose, she wasted no time. This is a hearing to determine custody of the minor child, Lily Morgan, age 10. The court's priority is the child's best interests. We will hear from all parties. Amanda went first. Her voice was steady, softened with just the right cracks of emotion. She told a story of mistakes made young, years spent rebuilding, and a longing to give my daughter the life she deserves. She spoke of the home she and Thomas had created, a safe, loving environment with 2 parents, a strong financial foundation, and access to top schools. Tears glistened at the corners of her eyes at exactly the right moments. Thomas followed, his tone smooth and confident. He painted pictures of family vacations, college funds, and a yard perfect for summer barbecues. He spoke of wanting to be the father figure Lily had been missing, careful to sound respectful of me while implying I couldn't offer the same stability. Then came my parents. My mother claimed they had tried for years to be involved, but that I'd made it difficult. My father said I was overly possessive and unwilling to let Lily form a healthy bond with her real mother. And there it was again, those 3 words that cut deeper than they knew. Real mother. By the time it was my turn, my pulse was steady, not from calm, but from the sharp clarity that comes when you're backed into a corner and know you have to fight. Amanda's lawyer came at me first, each question a needle meant to puncture my stability. Isn't it true you work 2 jobs? Yes, to build a college fund. And you live in an apartment, not a house? Yes, close to Lily's school and friends. Have you had any long-term relationships in the past decade? No, because my priority has been Lily's well-being. He wanted to make my life sound small, temporary, insufficient. But I knew the truth. Lily's world was built on love and constancy, not square footage or status. When my witnesses took the stand, the tide began to shift. Teachers spoke of Lily's academic progress, her kindness toward classmates, her confidence. The school counselor described her as securely attached to her primary caregiver and warned of the emotional harm a sudden change could cause. Neighbors testified to the bond they saw daily, a child thriving, loved, safe. I spoke last, looking the judge in the eye as I told her about the night Lily arrived, the first birthday cake, the Friday movie nights, the scraped knees and art projects and whispered bedtime promises. I have been there for every moment of her life, I said, not because I had to, but because I chose to, and I choose her every day. But the most important piece of our defense wasn't words. It was the sealed folder resting in Julia's briefcase, waiting for exactly the right moment to open. And I could feel it. Amanda had no idea it was coming. Julia waited until the courtroom had settled from my testimony. Then she rose, that sealed folder in her hand like it was made of glass. Your Honor, she said, her voice calm but carrying an edge, we have newly discovered evidence that directly contradicts the petitioner's claims and speaks to motive. We request it be entered into the record. The judge adjusted her glasses. Proceed. Julia handed the folder to the bailiff, who brought it to the bench. As the judge began reading, the air shifted, like everyone in the room felt the temperature drop. Her eyes moved quickly at first, then slowed. She glanced up at Amanda and Thomas, then at my parents. Miss Morgan, she said to Amanda, are you aware your husband has been conducting extensive searches for the identity of Lily's biological father? Amanda blinked. Thomas handled some things for our case, but... And were you aware, the judge continued, cutting her off, that this man recently inherited a substantial fortune? A low murmur rippled through the room. Amanda's face paled. Thomas's jaw tightened. The judge's voice sharpened. Furthermore, these documents show your parents, she nodded toward my mother and father, have been in regular contact with you for years, despite sworn statements claiming otherwise. That is perjury, and this court does not take it lightly. My father shifted uncomfortably. My mother stared at the tabletop as if willing it to open and swallow her. Thomas spoke up suddenly, his tone too quick. Your Honor, if I could explain. I suggest you confer with your attorney before saying another word, the judge interrupted, her tone like steel. The rest of the evidence spilled out in careful order. Thomas's financial instability, the over-leveraged mortgage, the mounting debts, the timing of their sudden interest in custody lining up exactly with the inheritance discovery. Amanda tried to keep her composure, but every denial came slower, thinner, less convincing. The image she'd built, the reformed mother, the perfect marriage, the stable home, was crumbling in real time, piece by piece. When the judge called for a recess to review the materials more thoroughly, the room erupted in low whispers. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded in my lap, while across the aisle, Amanda's lawyer bent toward her in a tense, hissing exchange. For the first time since this fight began, I saw something in Amanda's eyes that hadn't been there before. Fear. When the judge returned, the hum of whispers died instantly. She settled into her chair, the weight of her decision clear in the set of her jaw. Having reviewed the testimony and the newly submitted evidence, she began, the court has significant concerns about the petitioner's motives in seeking custody of the minor child. Her gaze flicked toward Amanda and Thomas, holding there for a beat too long. What was presented as a desire to reunite mother and daughter appears, in part, to be influenced by potential financial gain through the child's biological father's recent inheritance. This, combined with inconsistent statements under oath, undermines the credibility of the petitioner's case. Amanda's shoulders sagged. Thomas stared straight ahead, jaw clenched tight. The judge turned to me. Miss Winslow, the evidence clearly demonstrates you have provided a loving, stable home for Lily throughout her life. The testimony from educational and psychological professionals supports the conclusion that removing her from your care would cause significant emotional harm. She looked back at Amanda. Therefore, the petition for change of custody is denied. The air left my lungs all at once, my body trembling with the release of tension I hadn't realized I was still holding. Julia squeezed my hand under the table, a small nod of quiet victory. The judge wasn't done. Miss Morgan, you will be granted limited supervised visitation to be arranged through family services. Expansion of that visitation may be considered in the future if deemed in the child's best interest. Then her gaze shifted to my parents, her voice sharpening. Mr. and Mrs. Winslow, the court notes your willingness to provide misleading testimony in a case involving the welfare of your granddaughter. Such conduct is unacceptable. Consider this a warning. Further actions of this nature will result in formal sanctions. My mother's face flushed red. My father's jaw flexed, but neither of them spoke. The gavel came down, the sound reverberating through the wood-paneled room. Case closed. As the courtroom emptied, Amanda approached me, eyes red. I never wanted to hurt her, she said softly. Or you. It just got complicated. I met her gaze, my voice even. It didn't have to be. You made it complicated. She nodded once, almost like she agreed, then turned away. Thomas followed without a word. When I stepped outside, the late afternoon sun hit my face, warm and unfiltered. I felt lighter, almost dizzy with relief. Lily was waiting for me at her art teacher's house, bouncing on her toes as I came through the door. What did the judge say? Do I still live with you? I knelt, taking her hands. Yes, sweetheart. You stay with me. Always. Her body relaxed against mine, and she whispered into my neck, You promised, and you kept it. And for the first time in months, I believed we were finally safe. Winning in court didn't erase the damage. It just gave me the space to rebuild. The first thing I did was meet my parents on neutral ground, a small cafe downtown. No Lily present. I placed my coffee on the table and got straight to it. You lied in court. You tried to help take her away from me. That doesn't go away with an apology, if you even have one. My father didn't look at me. We thought we were doing what was right. For who? I asked. For Lily or for Amanda? My mother shifted in her seat. She's her mother. I'm her mother too, the one who stayed, the one who didn't disappear for a decade. My voice stayed calm, but the steel in it surprised even me. If you want to be part of Lily's life, there will be rules. Supervised visits only, no undermining my parenting, no private conversations with Amanda about Lily, and absolutely no more lies. They balked, of course, my father muttering about being treated like criminals, my mother trying to soften me with teary protests, but I didn't bend. Eventually they agreed, if only because it was the only option left. Amanda kept to the supervised visitation schedule. Thomas stopped showing up after the first month, his interest apparently waning now that the financial angle had vanished. Amanda brought art supplies, asked about school, and kept the conversations light. She didn't push for more time. If anything, she seemed relieved to have the structure in place. Meanwhile, I finally allowed myself to breathe again. I'd been holding my career back for years, afraid to add anything that might take focus from Lily. But now, I applied for and got a promotion. Health Services Coordinator for the school district. Better pay, better benefits, and still home in time for dinner. The extra income meant we could move into a slightly bigger apartment, one with a small fenced yard. The day we moved in, Lily ran circles in the grass, laughing. "We can plant flowers, and tomatoes, and maybe strawberries." I watched her twirl in the sunlight, and for the first time since that cream-colored envelope had arrived, I felt the knot in my chest loosen. But I didn't let myself forget. I knew Amanda, my parents, and the tangled loyalties of family weren't gone for good. They were just quiet. And quiet, I'd learned, could be temporary. Still, for now, we had our space, our peace, and I intended to protect it, no matter what came next. It was a few months after the court case when Amanda asked to meet me alone. We sat at the same cafe where we'd first reconnected, the hum of the espresso machine filling the pauses between us. "I was wrong," she said finally, her voice stripped of the polish I'd grown used to. "Not just about the custody case, about everything. You're a better mother to Lily than I could have been, even if I'd been healthy from the start." I studied her face, trying to read whether she meant it. She looked tired, older in a way that had nothing to do with age. "I ended things with Thomas," she continued. "After court, I realized I couldn't trust him. I'm focusing on my work, my sobriety, and on being in Lily's life the way I should have been from the start. As her birth mother, not as a replacement for you." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. Over time, our supervised visits settled into a rhythm. Amanda became more like an attentive aunt, someone Lily was glad to see, but didn't rely on. And Lily stopped asking whether Amanda would try to take her away. Life moved forward. My promotion allowed us to do more than just get by. We took weekend trips, started a small garden in the yard, and finally adopted a scrappy gray cat Lily named Button. When Lily turned 11, we celebrated with her closest friends. Cupcakes, balloons, and a homemade banner strung across the living room. After the last guest left, she handed me a folded piece of paper. Inside, in her careful handwriting, it said, "To my mom who chose me every day for 11 years. Biology makes relatives, but love makes family." The words blurred as my eyes filled. "You're my family too," I said, pulling her into my arms. That night, we sat on our little balcony, watching the sunset turn the sky to gold. Lily rested her head on my shoulder. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Mom hadn't left me with you that night?" "Sometimes," I admitted. "But then I think about everything we would have missed, and I'm glad it happened exactly the way it did." She was quiet for a moment, then softly, "Me too." I looked out at the horizon, feeling the kind of peace that comes only after surviving the storm. We'd been tested by lies, by greed, by blood ties twisted into weapons, and we were still here. Because family isn't just who you're born to, it's who stays.